This Week in the Boardroom, brought to you by NYSE Governance Services Corporate Board Member, along with Governance Knowledge Partners, the Center for Audit Quality, and Grant Thornton, and contributing partners, National Investor Relations Institute, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. I'm TK Kerstetter, Chairman of the NYSE Governance Services Corporate Board Member, and we are welcoming you back to part two of a very interesting session that we started last week, which was titled Separate CEO and Board Guidelines. And rejoining us, in fact, me not letting him out of the studio until we filmed the second part of this, is William Nasser, who's the chairman of the board of the Laclede Group in St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome back, Bill.
Thank you, TK.
So in the first session, which we hopefully are, if our audience hasn't seen, they need to go back and watch that so that they can see the continuation and the relevance of what we've created here. But you've created the roles and responsibilities of the separate CEO and board, independent board chair responsibilities. And that's sort of the document that you've created, and that's what we're talking about. And the importance of that is we see that's unique because while we see corporate governance guidelines, we rarely see somebody sort of putting down on paper the responsibilities about the relationship between the CEO and the independent board chair. So to that, I tip my hat to you and your organization. It really is very well done. Last week we talked most importantly about the role in board strategy, what the chairman's responsibility is, what's management's responsibility, what's the board's responsibility. We also talked a little bit about how it's not the CEO, it's not the board chair's responsibility to manage the CEO in the traditional sense. That responsibility is really the responsibility of the board. There are actions that the chair has to have with the CEO, but he is doing that in the representation of the board, not as a manager. So that brings us up to speed, okay? Now we want to talk about one of the things, the guidelines itself. And one of the things I thought was interesting is you have a statement in the very beginning of the guidelines. It says, no effort is made to examine the pros and cons of separation of the roles, okay? Obviously a big debate everywhere. Yes. So you put that in for what reason? Was it because you felt that as a rule, you one size doesn't fit all and the conditions may change? Did you just want to avoid the issue completely? Why did you feel compelled to make sure that you put that up front?
It was not avoidance of the issue. We had in fact deliberated for months on whether or not we wanted to separate the roles in the Laclede group and had made the decision. But as a matter of fact, we do agree, the board in this case agrees that it's better to study the particular situation rather than say one size fits all. So circumstances could very well change in the future, and we'll make the decision at that time. The board will.
Well, I don't have to tell you it's a hot button, but the idea that you thought it was a great idea, but you're not married to it forever, I think is a great way to handle that process. And the fact that you felt the need, again, that's what makes this document so unique, to get that down so that everybody on the board understands that this is how we fly, I thought is, again, an excellent example of what you should do with a document. Mm-hmm. It was also interesting to note that early on there was you had things in there that were sort of establishing the ground rules, okay, for what was going to happen. And there was one section that read, there must be no ambiguity about the fact that the CEO runs the company and the chair leads the board. The matters for board consideration are oversight, review and input of basic strategy, performance, succession, monitoring risk management, but then usually extended to mergers and acquisitions, material financial decisions, stock buybacks, capital expenditures, as well as approval, monitoring the annual budget and the plan. it's just a great process to get that down, to say, hey, here are the things that are our responsibilities. Do you think that that has significantly helped your CEO, knowing that this is the things that the board is going to be focusing on?
I do. We didn't want to waste time on discovering new issues or conflicting viewpoints on issues, so we felt like it was good right from the start. We have a very active, dynamic CEO, and she is moving forward rapidly. This has cleared the way for her to know specifically, and for the board to know specifically what the rights and responsibilities and duties are of the CEO and what the board's duties are, including the chair. And it has worked well.
Yeah. So a lot of what you have in there is talks about the relationship between you as the board chair and the CEO. Mm-hmm. And one of the sections, it says the guidelines that outline that the CEO should share personal point of view, concerns, yes, and values. Okay? I mean, it's saying that we expect open dialogue,
we do,
honest and whatever, and yet then you go and say the chair must have the ability to listen effectively to the CEO in order to understand underlying thoughts, concerns, and meanings, and be able to convey such to the full board, if the yes, CEO doesn't have the chance to do that. And interestingly enough then, as a rule, all communications will come from the company CEO and not the chair or the other board members. Now, just documenting the rules of communicating is valuable. I mean, I would want that in a corporate governance document anyway, but laying this out, again, it seems simple, but it's such an important statement. I would assume, though, you appreciate that there will be times, particularly in today's environment, that people want to hear from the chair.
Indeed, we do. On the other hand, we thought about this carefully. It went through our corporate governance committee, and we formally adopted the policy that the normal communication would come out of the company and the CEO as opposed to the board. There are definitely circumstances that could arise where it would be appropriate for the board or the chair to speak, but those will be handled on a case-by-case basis. The policy is ordinarily the management will handle it. And there are two types of communication, obviously, that are referenced in here. One type is internal between the management and specifically the CEO and the board, and the other is communication with the company employees and external communication, whether it's investment people or employees of other companies, the community, et cetera. So I believe that my job is to help facilitate communication between the CEO/management and the board. So that's differentiated from the external communications.
Well, I've said this, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but I really think, first of all, thank you for making this available. This will be available close to our This Week in the Boardroom section on our website, which is www.boardmember.com. So I want to thank you for that and encourage the audience, if you want to see a copy of this, that's where you can go to get a copy. But let me ask you this question. If you were to join another board, would you, even not knowing about how that board might operate, would you feel that one of your early recommendations would be to have the chair and the CEO go through the same exercise and guidelines that you did?
I would, and although I know there's a difference because I've been a lead director for a number of years in the past, there is a difference between the relationship with a lead director and the relationship that a CEO has with a chair that's non-executive. Nonetheless, I think the basic principles are the same, and realizing the other difference is it could still be a good policy to implement. So yes, I would wholeheartedly support it.
When you think about it, obviously the chair is responsible for running the meeting, okay, the board meetings. So that's probably the most obvious difference with the lead director. But when you look at the communications end and the relationship end, reading your guidelines, I'm not sure there's too much else that really you would take out, in the way of that, because every communication that you talk about has to flow through
It does.
somewhere. So if your title's lead director or your title's independent chair, it seems other than that actual board meeting stuff, everything else would be pretty good.
I think it would be quite similar. Now, we're always looking for improvement, so I'm sure there are some things that could be done better, but this is a good starting point.
Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough for agreeing to do last week's show and this week's show so that we could really sort of dig into your guidelines. And hopefully, if nothing else, people will see that your organization cares about governance, and this is the level that it goes to. So I certainly tip my hat to the Laclede group for what they've done on that side, and the fact that you would share it with us is I'm even more appreciative. So
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and that will conclude this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. We hope you'll join us next week, where we'll take a look at another critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for This Week in the Boardroom, brought to you by NYSE Governance Services, Corporate Board Member, along with Governance Knowledge Partners, the Center for Audit Quality, and Grant Thornton, and contributing partners, National Investor Relations Institute, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.